Hello, and welcome to the Friday Night Author Roundtable. I'm your host, Chris Baker, and during the next half hour, we'll be speaking with several very talented authors about their newly released books, what their inspiration was for creating their unique stories, and why it would be a great book to read and share with your friends and family. If you love a good story with interesting characters going through fascinating circumstances, I think this next book in the Friday Night Author Roundtable is going to be right up your alley. The book is called Our Perfect Moment by author Perry Stanton from Fulton Books. Perry, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Now tell everybody about this story.
Well, this is a classic coming-of-age love story that takes place about 40 years in the past in my hometown of Brainerd, Minnesota. It was a very different time before cell phones and the internet. Everyone didn't have personal computers then and social media, all that kind of thing. And it's against the backdrop of growing up in a small town in northern Minnesota.
Now, where did the inspiration come for these characters and this story?
Well, the characters are all entirely fictitious, but they are representative of the kind of people you would meet anywhere. A lot of the people who have read my book have said, even though they didn't grow up in Brainerd, that go to school with me, that they saw a lot of similarities between the characters and people they knew. I just thought I would write something that I knew, and that was what it's like to fall in love at an early age with your high school sweetheart who becomes the love of your life. But the characters are not meant to be representative of me or my wife.
Now, if you're talking about the target audience, who's the type of person, who's the type of reader that's really going to love this story and this type of story?
Well, I'm a baby boomer myself, and it takes place in a time period when baby boomers were the generation of the time. But I think a lot of younger people could appreciate it, too, because of the differences in society and all the changes that have happened in the course of 40 years. Societal views on many things have changed, and the way we used to have to interact with each other was in person, not over our cell phones or social media or email and all that kind of thing. And it's just very different. My kids certainly grew up a lot differently than I did, and I think they would find it very interesting.
Now, how was it working with Fulton Books to get this book published and to be able to share your story?
Oh, I have written books in the past, but they were published through NASA, who took care of all the publication for me. This was my first foray into fiction, and Fulton Books just took me through step by step and made it happen. They take care of the formatting, the editing, page layout, and everything else that goes into taking a manuscript and turning it into a book, and it's just quite effortless.
Now, is this something you're going to do again? Maybe another book in the fiction realm, maybe a follow-up to this down the road?
Yes, I do. Some of the people who have read the book have been requesting a sequel to it, and I'm thinking about that. I also have 5 or 6 other books in mind. I'm also working on a screenplay in a completely different genre. So I've got a lot of ideas.
A lot to look forward to then from you. Now, this book, Our Perfect Moment, when people read this, what do you hope is the most important thing they get from this book, or what's the most important message here?
Well, it's indicative of growing up in a small town, and I know that that's very different from friends I've met throughout the years who grew up, for instance, in New York City. And it's very different to grow up in a small town and living on a farm, that kind of thing. And for the people who grew up, as I did, can bring back a lot of different memories for them and see how things used to be. Things have changed a lot.
I think people are going to love this book. For a guy like me who grew up in a small town and can relate to that sort of feel, I know I'm going to enjoy it. And people who maybe haven't and really would like to know more about that small town feeling, I think that's going to be a real draw for people. And of course, great characters and interesting scenarios. And I think everyone's going to love this book. The book is called Our Perfect Moment by author Perry Stanton from Fulton Books. You can get your copy today at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Google Play, online, as well as at the brick and mortar stores. And Perry, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Chris.
Our next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable is a book I think a lot of people are going to get a lot from because it's about overcoming failure and putting your past behind you. I think that's at the heart of it. The book is called Lessons from Horses by author Randy Helm from Christian Faith Publishing. Randy, thank you for being on the show.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Now tell everybody a little bit about this book.
Well, the book actually came about pretty naturally. I pastored for a number of years and trained horses, so I started integrating those two things and started doing clinics and using horses as an illustration. But a lot of it just came from just personal me realizing that perhaps I had a lot to learn from the horses. And then in 2012, I was hired to start a wild horse inmate program at the state prison. And so I'm always using those connections with horses and inmates regarding life and overcoming obstacles and kingdoms in conflict, all kinds of things that horses relate to. So I'm always thinking along those lines. So it really came about pretty naturally.
Now, what inspired you to take kind of the things you had experienced and things you were doing and learning and put those into a book to share with everyone? Where did that all kind of start?
Well, it really started. I was doing a clinic, and I had a horse that had been severely abused, and it was lame when I got it and had cactus all in it, where it had been drugged through cactus. And I was doing a clinic, and I decided to go ahead and make that clinic for women only and deal with overcoming abuse. And I rode the horse for the first time in that clinic, but the horse had a long road to recovery and trust, and I rode the horse for the first time in that clinic. And I think there was when I really understood just the magnitude of just visually to see that horse come from that and become something that was not just rideable, but a very beautiful horse. So I really wanted to ride the horse for the first time in that clinic because I wanted to really drive home the point that the abuse didn't change destiny or value or purpose. We just had to factor that in to get there. And so after that, I started using horses more and more and finding those connections, and it really took off from there.
Now, I have to imagine this is probably the kind of book that everybody could find a little something they can relate to in it, but did you have a particular reader in mind when you wrote this?
Well, I think when it started, I was thinking more along the lines of people who had a ranching or horse background, but the more widely distributed and read the book is, I'm finding that there are just as many people who have no horse background that will connect to the various chapters. So that's been a pleasant surprise, but the audience I was originally thinking would be more people in the cowboy community.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to be able to get this book published and to share your message?
Well, it was really surprising because, I was thinking about self-publishing and some of those things. It was the first book, and so reached out to them, and just a matter of sending in the manuscript and having it go through the process, and they contacted me and said, we love the book and we would like to publish it. And so from then on, they supply you with the various professionals that kind of guide you through it. So it was much simpler than I feared, I guess I could say.
Now, this book, Lessons from Horses, when people read this, what do you hope is the most important thing, the most important message they get from your book?
I think the most important message would be just the redemptive aspect. We start connecting with the horse and realize that a horse has to go through a lot of changes. They have to be able to forgive, get the past behind them, all those things. And so I hope people are able to connect to those things and realize that if a horse can do that, then there are some parallels to life to move forward, have purpose, and all the critical things that God really gives us. So that would be my desire.
As I said earlier, I think everybody's going to be able to find something they can relate to, and really a fascinating book that I encourage everyone to pick up. The book is called Lessons from Horses by author Randy Helm from Christian Faith Publishing. You can get your copy today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, as well as at the brick and mortar stores. And Randy, thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you.
If you're looking for a book that kind of takes you through the life of Christ, especially through the focus of the book of Luke, and really kind of challenges people to bear their cross daily, I think this next book in the Friday Night Author Roundtable is going to be perfect. The book is called Our Father's Business, Pick Up the Mission, Drop the Mic by author Tina C. Williams-Koroma from Christian Faith Publishing. Tina, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now tell everybody a little bit about your book.
So the book is really about us coming into owning our identity, our destiny, and our venture. So Christ asked a pivotal question, why are you looking for me? Don't you know I must be about my Father's business? And we each all have a calling from the Lord, and there's a business that we need to be about. So it really looks at various stories, personal stories from my life, other observations, and stories that people have had, but largely it's around Christ and his life and the nuggets that we can draw from how he lived, being about his Father's business. And the book of Luke in particular was chosen because it focuses on the life of Christ in his capacity as being a human being, a man. So something that we can all relate to as we go about being about our Father's business.
What kind of inspired this whole venture with this book?
It was really at a time in my life where there was a crossroads. A lot was going on in terms of relationship decisions and just really looking at my life and the direction that my life would take. And so I felt there was a safe path, a path that a lot of other people around me were expecting, and there was nothing wrong with that path. And, certainly it was, the relationship I was in was with another believer, someone who was also Christ-centered, but I just didn't sense that was the direction or the timing that the Lord had for me. And it really brought into view me having to look at my relationships, my friendships, where I was going to church, the direction of my life, my choices around which jobs to take. So all of that was kind of swirling at that time, and it was really a decision and a line drawn in the sand to say, you know what, there's a lot of different ways in which I could go, but I really want to make sure that I'm aligned properly to fulfill my destiny. I don't want to be out of position to be all of who God intended. And so that was really where the notion of the book came from. I actually wrote a poem with that title, Our Father's Business, first before the book was fully written.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to get this book published and to be able to share this?
I had a really great experience with them. Very responsive, very accommodating in terms of questions asked. So it's definitely an experience that I would recommend for others, just really having a one-stop shop for guiding you through a process of getting through to publishing.
Now, this book, Our Father's Business, when people read this, what do you hope is the most important message that they get from this book?
The most important message is that the Lord has a specific identity, like just for each one of us, and who we are in embracing and really owning who we are is so vital because it really drives us being positioned to walk in our destiny and to pursue the ventures that God has outlined for us. As we can see in the life of Christ, it was his identity that was always under attack. In the wilderness, Satan coming at him was, if you're the Son of God, if you're the Son of God. And then you see the Pharisees challenging him in the same way, his identity. And even when he's about to go to the cross, you're the King of the Jews. Is that who you are? So it was really centered around Christ's identity, and it still is today. And, us being followers of Christ, it's the same thing. So we really have to, and what I really want readers to do is to really own who they are in Christ, understand who that is, look at who God from, every aspect of their identity, from their ethnicity to their family, where all of those details are not by accident. God is very detail-oriented, and so just really understanding and owning who you are. That's what I really want readers to take away.
Well, I think that's a message that everybody needs and everybody needs to hear daily. And I encourage everyone to pick up this. I think it'll be a great book of encouragement and inspiration. The book is called Our Father's Business by author Tina C. Williams-Koroma from Christian Faith Publishing. Get your copy today. Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, as well as at the brick and mortar stores. And Tina, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much. Have a great one.
Of course, Christians and non-Christians alike go through challenges in their life. And this next book on the Friday Night Author Roundtable going to help apply biblical principles to help handle these situations. The book is called The Tournament of Your Life by author Douglas Pate from Christian Faith Publishing. Douglas, thanks for being on the show.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be a part of your show tonight.
Now, tell everybody a little about this book.
It's kind of almost like a daily devotional. It's a 3-week challenge, and each day there are going to be tasks you have to perform, and it's based on principles of golf in the Bible. You keep in mind with integrity and doing what's right and those kind of things. So it's like a golf course. There'll be a different course each day. So there's going to be 18 holes, so there's 18 tasks, and you're trying to get par. So just like golf, you're trying to get par, but these tasks are, Christian-related type activities that help you get par. The closer you start getting to par, the more faith starts to build, et cetera.
Now, what inspired this book? Where did that all kind of start?
It was something I was looking at for a while, just being able to go out and do things, and I would say, hey, I'd tell my wife, I'd get to eat and say, hey, I got a par for that. And we just kind of laugh about it. And then later on, she said, hey, you ought to write a book using that. And I was like, that would be interesting. And as I continued to think about it and put some things together, she really pushed me. And matter of fact, she was in the process of writing a book as well. And instead of her getting hers published, she ended up pushing me to get my book published first. So I really love her dearly for that, and I appreciate it. She's been by my side through a lot of different things, and this was very inspirational and very important to us. So I really thank her for inspiring me.
Who's kind of the person that you had in mind when you wrote this book, or is this really something that anybody could learn a lot from?
Anybody could learn a lot from it. Yes, it's good for Christians to kind of refresh themselves with a lot of things and some of the Bible verses that are used, et cetera, and just some of the type activities that help a Christian kind of refresh themselves, but a non-Christian as well. These are all the things, again, are kind of based around having good etiquette and doing the right things for other people, doing the right things for yourself and your body. And so definitely be good for even a family, a work group, a Sunday school class. So it's good for anybody.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to be able to get your book published and to be able to share this?
It was super. I mean, it's a hard process in a way to say I'm going to write a book, but having them by your side to help you along the way made it so much easier. I would recommend this process to anybody that had, and matter of fact, I have recommended it to several people that had, hey, I thought about writing a book, hey, well, you can do it, and this proves it definitely, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Now, is this something you thought about doing again? Maybe a follow-up to this down the road, or you're working on anything new?
Well, this book was, it's a golf edition, basically, and if it is successful as I hope, there'll be other editions like a basketball edition or soccer edition, etc. Now,
this book, The Tournament of Your Life, when people read this, what do you hope is the most important message or the most important thing they gain from reading this book?
I hope they gain that, just doing just the simplest thing sometimes, not being selfish, by doing little things that sometimes help other people enriches your life as well. And so I'm hoping that's the case, that we're all start doing just the slightest little things for each other. And also, there's some things within this task to where we need to do some things for ourselves, too, to build our physical strength and our mental strength and our Christian strength. So that's what I'm hoping.
Well, I think this is going to be an excellent book. We all sometimes need a little kickstart, a little kick in the pants to get going and get doing things for others. And I think this is going to be a great book. Christians, non-Christians alike, everyone's going to be blessed for reading this. The book is called The Tournament of Your Life by author Douglas Pate from Christian Faith Publishing. You can get your copy today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, the brick and mortar stores, just a few of the locations. And Douglas, thanks for being on the show.
I appreciate it, Chris.
We're going to take a look at one of the most well-known miracles of the Bible with this next book in the Friday Night Author Roundtable. The book is called A Boy and His Baskets, based on a true miracle by author Eric Rodko from Christian Faith Publishing. Eric, thanks for being on the show.
Very welcome, Chris. Good to be on.
Now, tell everybody a little about this book.
The book focuses precisely on the boy in the story in John 6:9, where a lad is found to be in the presence of Jesus and his disciples with 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and it's a story centering around how he arrived in that moment, a little bit of a before and after of that story, but focusing on the boy and his life.
Now, what inspired you to write this story? Where did that all begin?
Well, I think my target audience are boys ages 8, 9 to 12, 13, parents of boys, single mothers of boys. I, as a boy growing up with a single mom, that 8, 9 to 12, 13 range is I think a critical period in a boy's life in building their self-esteem. They're beginning to find their identity, whether it's in sports or with girls or marching band, what have you, and even growing in faith. I think that's a critical period, and so I had the idea of writing a story a long time ago about that particular lad, because in the Bible there are so many characters that suddenly show up in the narrative, and we don't know much about them.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to be able to get your book published and see it come to life on the page?
Christian Faith Publishing, compared to other self-publishers that I've worked with in the past, has been fantastic. Working with Taylor Burke and others has been fantastic. It's a smooth process. It's a learning curve process. I've self-published books before, but not a children's story full-color book. So this was an interesting learning experience in terms of the setup of the graphic design and matching the text to the narrative. So it's been an interesting and very good process. But Christian Faith Publishing has been fantastic throughout.
Now, have you thought about doing this again? Maybe taking other stories from the Bible, miracles from the Bible, and doing it in this way?
I do. I have several other books in the works. I'd like to do 2 more, similarly focusing on miracles or a particular moment in the Bible where a story of a boy will come into play. I had gone to school for narrative biblical theology, so I want to make sure the stories that I write are reasonable, historically accurate, theologically sound. I've always enjoyed creative writing, so I make sure that those factors play into what I'm writing and what I'm crafting.
And when people read this, this book, kids and of course, parents and grandparents, adults are reading it with kids. What do you hope is the most important message that comes across from this story?
Well, I think, not long ago, I saw an article in Family Life, and I read that, raising, I don't have children of my own, but I understand this as a boy being raised by a single mom, that today, there's a real challenge to families and parents, single parents, in raising sons in the, as they say, the crisis of manhood. And in my mind, what happens when young boys face the dual challenge of living in a culture where there's a manhood crisis, but then they're having to deal with a life crisis themselves, and how they grow up, where do they end up as adults without Jesus? So the message I wanted to relay through this book is that that's what we as Christian adults, parents, godparents, uncles, aunts, what have you, friends, need to think about the children in our lives and how in their younger ages, particularly, like I said, that self-development, self-esteem development range, are growing in their faith, and giving them stories that capture their imagination but inspire them to get to know Jesus better and what he can do in their lives.
Well, I think this book is going to do exactly that, to capture the imagination and definitely inspire. And I encourage everyone to pick up their copy today. The book is called A Boy in His Baskets by author Eric Rodko from Christian Faith Publishing. You can get your copy today, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, online, as well as at the brick-and-mortar stores. And Eric, thank you for being on the show.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
Now on the Friday Night Author Roundtable, a book I think is really going to be a great source of inspiration for kids, especially with bullying being so prevalent these days. The book is called Piercy's Pet Puggasaur Pete, Bully Eradicator by author Charles E. Pickens from Christian Faith Publishing. Charles, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
Now tell everybody a little bit about this story.
Well, Percy's Pet Puggasaur Pete is about two clever young kids who are just fed up with bullying in their neighborhood, and they come across this very unique friend to help them bring an end to it.
Now, what inspired this story? Where did that all kind of come from?
I'm an artist first, so my paintings and my drawings sometimes speak to me and telling me that it's a lot more to them than just a single image.
I was going to say, because not only did you write this, you illustrated it as well. How was that as an author to be able to write a book? It must be an amazing thing, but to be able to illustrate it as well and tell the story in that way, it must be a pretty big achievement for you.
Well, I think that's actually worked to my advantage, because in most cases, many authors put down the words first and then they hire an illustrator to illustrate it. Me, I work just the opposite. I create the illustration, and the illustrations speak to me, and it tells me what it wants the story to be.
Now, how was it working with Christian Faith Publishing to see these words you've written and these illustrations you've drawn and painted come to life on the page? How was it working with CFP?
Well, Christian Faith Publishing was a great experience. I mean, I enjoyed working with them better than I've worked with any publishing company in the past. In fact, I was beginning to think my personal rep, Shalonda, had angel wings that she tucked away before she got to work in the morning, because it was so great working with her.
Now, is this something where we're going to see more from these characters down the road, maybe a sequel to this?
Yes. I'm currently working on a follow-up series, and it's almost ready for the publishers. Just a few more tweaks on the paintings and a few tweaks on the editing of the story, and it'll be ready.
Now, when somebody's looking for a book for their kid, who do you think is good? What's kind of like your target reader? What's the age group you're looking for, and what kind of kids are you hoping get this book?
Well, Percy's Pet Puggasaur Pete, Bully Eradicator, is geared towards ages 5 to 10, but I've had parents come to me and tell me how much they enjoy reading it to kids even younger, and how I've already created a fan base and they're waiting for the next series. So I'm just having fun.
And when kids do read this, or parents or grandparents, aunts and uncles read it to their kids, well, what do you hope is the most important message kids get when they read this book, Piercy's Pet Puggasaur Pete?
Well, Chris, I really hope they understand that bullying is a fact of life, and that they should strive to just be the best you can be. Because I was small as a kid, so I was bullied myself, and bullying simply made me a stronger person, I think.
Well, I think that's an important message for kids to get these days, because, like I said, bullying is such a sad fact of life these days. But I think this is going to really provide a strong message for the kids out there. The book is called Piercy's Pet Puggasaur Pete, Bully Eradicator by author Charles E. Pickens from Christian Faith Publishing. I encourage everyone to pick up their copy today for the kids. They're going to enjoy this. Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, just a few of the online sources, as well as the brick-and-mortar stores. And Charles, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Thank you so much for joining us for the Friday Night Author Roundtable. We'll be back next week with another great group of talented authors. to discuss their books, their process, and their accomplishments. Have a great weekend, everyone.